What if I told you most marriages don't fail because of cheating, money, or boredom? They fail because of something far quieter, something no one warns men about. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men don't leave when they're angry. They leave when they're empty. At first, he tried explaining. He tried being patient. He tried being understanding. But every time he spoke up, his needs were minimized, reframed, or labeled as selfish. So he adapted. That's where dark psychology quietly enters the room. He learned silence creates less conflict than honesty. Compliance creates more peace than authenticity. And emotional withdrawal feels safer than rejection. From the outside, everything looks stable. Inside, something is dying slowly. And here's the twist most people miss. Making him happy was never hard. It was simple, almost insultingly simple. But simplicity doesn't benefit people who thrive on control. And that's where this story really begins. Here's the psychological trap most men fall into without realizing it. They confuse endurance with loyalty. At first, the small dismissals feel manageable. A joke at his expense, a sigh when he speaks. Affection slowly becoming conditional. Dark psychology calls this incremental erosion. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. Just enough discomfort to keep him adjusting himself. He starts asking fewer questions, sharing fewer thoughts, needing less on purpose. Why? Because every unmet need teaches him a lesson. Your peace matters less than her mood, so he becomes efficient, predictable, emotionally low maintenance. From the outside, he looks like the perfect husband, reliable, calm, unproblematic. But inside, he's running survival software, not love. And here's the dangerous part. The quieter he gets, the more power the dynamic gives the other person. Because silence is often mistaken for satisfaction. And once that mistake settles in, the damage accelerates fast. This is where most people misunderstand men completely. They assume silence means peace. In reality, silence usually means resignation. Dark psychology reveals something brutal here. When a man stops arguing, he hasn't calmed down. He stopped believing change is possible. Early on, he needed very little. Not perfection, not constant affection, not endless emotional conversations. He needed calm, respect, recognition. But when those needs were framed as weakness or entitlement, something shifted. His nervous system adapted. Less hope, less expectation. This is emotional extinction. The brain stops seeking what consistently leads to pain. So he gives up wanting. He shows up physically but leaves psychologically. He performs the role without the reward. And here's the part no one talks about. This emotional shutdown feels normal after a while to both partners. But what looks like stability is actually decay. And decay never stays hidden forever. Here's where the illusion becomes dangerous. Because when a man shuts down emotionally, the relationship doesn't explode. It stabilizes. Dark psychology calls this false equilibrium. No fights, no tension, no emotional demands. To her, this feels like success. To him, it feels like surrender. He stops initiating affection because rejection rewired his expectations. He stops sharing thoughts because they were once used against him. He stops asking for peace because conflict always followed. So he adapts again. Lower energy, lower desire, lower emotional presence. And here's the twist. This version of him is often punished less, which reinforces the behavior. She gets compliance without effort, stability without reciprocity, a partner who no longer asks anything of her. But underneath that calm surface, respect is eroding, attraction is fading, connection is dying quietly, and the moment he finally stops caring, that's when the ending becomes inevitable. Here's the part that feels unfair, but matters the most. Most men don't leave when things are bad. They leave when things stop hurting. Dark psychology explains this through emotional numbing. Pain fades, not because it's resolved, but because the mind shuts it off. At this stage, he's no longer angry. Anger would mean he still cares. He's neutral, indifferent. He does his duties flawlessly, pays the bills, keeps promises, shows up on schedule. But love isn't in the building anymore. And here's the paradox. This is often when she finally feels safe. No arguments, no tension, no emotional pressure. What she doesn't realize, the man who could be hurt is already gone. And once a man detaches without drama, There is almost no way back, because detachment isn't a phase. It's an exit strategy. This is where the power dynamic quietly flips, not through control, through indifference. Dark psychology calls this emotional withdrawal dominance. The man who no longer needs validation becomes unpredictable. He's not trying to win arguments anymore. He's not trying to be understood. He's not trying at all. And suddenly, the relationship feels off. Something's missing. The energy changed. She may sense it but can't name it. He's still present yet unreachable, still polite yet distant. This is when questions start. Are you okay? Did I do something? But the timing is wrong, because his need to be seen expired years ago. Here's the brutal truth. Most men don't leave because they're unappreciated once. They leave because they were unappreciated for too long. And when that realization finally lands, the countdown has already started. This is the moment most people never recognize until it's over. The shift from trying to fix to preparing to leave. Dark psychology explains it simply. When effort stops, observation begins. He starts watching instead of reacting, listening instead of arguing, calculating instead of hoping. Not to manipulate, to protect himself. He notices how easily peace exists without emotional investment. How calm life feels when expectations are gone. How little resistance there is when he no longer needs anything. That calm feels dangerous because it's freeing. This is where emotional detachment becomes clarity, not bitterness, not revenge. Clarity. He begins asking quiet questions. What would my life look like without this? Who am I when I'm not shrinking? And once those questions take root, the relationship is already living on borrowed time. Here's the mistake almost everyone makes at this stage. They think love ends with anger. It doesn't. It ends with acceptance. Dark psychology calls this emotional closure without confrontation, the most dangerous kind. He's no longer waiting for change, no longer hoping for effort, no longer trying to be understood. He's already grieved the relationship, while still inside it. That's why the breakup feels sudden. That's why it comes out of nowhere. That's why she says, "You never told me it was this bad." But he did, years ago, in smaller, quieter ways, by pulling back, by going silent, by needing less. And here's the final twist of this phase. When he finally leaves, he feels relief, not pain, because he left emotionally long before he packed his bags. Now comes the part that makes this uncomfortable to hear, because this isn't just about men leaving. It's about why staying felt pointless. Dark psychology exposes a hard pattern. Some partners don't ignore needs accidentally. They ignore them because there's no consequence for not caring. The relationship still functions. Bills get paid. Routines stay intact. Security remains. So the assumption forms quietly. He'll stay no matter what. And once someone believes your presence is guaranteed, your happiness becomes optional. That's when respect erodes. That's when appreciation disappears. That's when affection becomes transactional. Not out of cruelty, out of complacency. But here's the truth most people learn too late. Love without effort doesn't stay love. It becomes convenience. And the moment convenience stops serving both people equally, someone eventually walks away. Here's the final truth most relationships never confront. Making a man happy was never complicated. It just wasn't prioritized. Dark psychology teaches this clearly. People invest where they see value. They nurture what they're afraid to lose. Peace, respect, appreciation, affection, stability. That's the entire list. No mind games, no emotional gymnastics. When those needs are met, a man expands. He gives more, protects more, commits deeper. When they're ignored, he doesn't explode. He fades. And by the time fading is noticed, the relationship is already over. So here's the choice. Care while it's easy, or regret when it's permanent. Because the real tragedy isn't men leaving. It's how effortless it would have been to make them stay. And effort, when it's genuine, changes everything.